Mercury is currently in retrograde and will be there for the next 3-ish weeks or so. And in true sky sidereal astrology, it is retrograde in the 13th zodiac sign, Ophiuchus. So super potent energy for the next 3 weeks with this particular transit. Let's get into what this means. So first things first, I'm talking about true sky sidereal astrology here, using astronomical placements of the etheric bodies as they travel along the line of the ecliptic in real time. If you're not familiar with this type of astrology, have a look at some of my other videos where I go into deeper explanation. But in sum, tropical astrology is a mental social construct based on a system revolving around the seasons and a calendar designed to ensnare humanity in a constant cycle of consumption and production. The only reason it tracks is based on the patterning of it and the collective consciousness putting a whole bunch of energy behind it. In my experience, tropical astrology represents our 3D or matrix, very physical versions of ourselves, very karmic charts in the tropical system, whereas true sky sidereal, which is the same system, but using the correct or current placements. I shouldn't say correct because it's not about right or wrong. Like everything just is experience. But using true sky sidereal, we're actually looking at where the etheric bodies are in the universe and how the energies combine from those etheric bodies and the constellations that they're passing through. So let's start by having a look at the sky in real time as I'm recording this on Monday, November 25th. The sun is currently in Scorpio. You can see the constellation faintly behind it of the Scorpion. And then right next to it, sharing the sky with Scorpio, but a little bit behind, is the 13th zodiac sign, the serpent bearer Ophiuchus. Okay, so this is another aspect that differentiates true sky sidereal from both Vedic and tropical. So Mercury is usually pretty close to the sun. They have a similar path along the line of the ecliptic. And it is currently right over the leg of Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer here. Okay, so this is actually really important and very timely, as Ophiuchus is the higher octave of Scorpio and is directly over the galactic center or the middle of the Milky Way, our galaxy. And this is basically a black hole, which is the feminine receptive energy and basically the womb of our universe. So when you include Ophiuchus into the patterning of the zodiac, it provides a pattern interrupt, which is an important part of quantum physics, and it is necessary in order to transform the wheel of zodiac from the wheel of samsara, or never-ending suffering in the third dimension, into spiral dynamics. So Ophiuchus serves as a choice point or a break in the pattern wherein we can choose differently and move up a level into a higher rung of the spiral. It is ruled by Chiron and represents the fifth element, the ethers, which is the space between the everything and the nothing, essentially the Godhead, okay? Divinity is the space between matter, essentially, and this is what Ophiuchus represents. Ophiuchus is the healer, the redeemer, very much phoenix reborn from the ashes kind of energy. Mercury, the planet of transmission and communication, being retrograde in Ophiuchus. So what does that mean? Let's unpack that concept, because I feel like these kind of astrological terms are thrown around and nobody really understands. I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people don't actually understand what it means, okay? So a planet being retrograde in a particular constellation or grouping of stars or zodiac sign, okay, it means that its path along the line of the ecliptic, which is centered around the Earth, is moving backwards. Okay, so the planet isn't like revolving backwards, but its progress through the grouping of stars from the perspective of Earth is backwards. Okay, so as it's moving backwards through the sign, it is bringing things up for us to reconsider. So Mercury retrograde happens about 3 times a year. So every 3 or 4 months, we have a period of time, about 3 weeks, where we are rethinking things. Mercury, a lot of times people are like, oh my God, Mercury retrograde, like technology, this and that. But like The only reason it's a problem, or it's viewed as a problem, is because we're coming from a society that says that we need to be producing and doing things and moving forward all of the time. But in actuality, the natural rhythm of the universe is just as much backwards as forwards, like a pendulum, okay? You can't just be going forward all the time, and you can't just keep the pendulum in one end of the swing. Like, it has to go the other way in order to maintain its momentum, okay? So these periods of reflection are not only beneficial, but they're necessary. Since Mercury represents the way that we communicate and the way that we think, it also connects down to even the physiological aspects of our brain, which is how we think, and the neurons and the synapses in between the neurons. So this period of time, thinking differently or regrouping to think differently moving forward, allows us to rewire our brains. This is how we can facilitate neuroplasticity and begin to make new pathways that are easier for thoughts to travel along, essentially. So Mercury in retrograde in the sign of Ophiuchus is a massive opportunity for us to think about a different world paradigm. Think about what's hidden behind. Think about what needs to be healed and what can be released. This is a great time to develop new thought patterns and open ourselves up to be more flexible in the way that we're thinking, specifically around the deepest wounds that we need to heal. And here's a clue: the things that trigger you the most, the things that make you the most upset, and I actually don't even like using the word trigger. Activate is my preferred descriptor here, right? So like anything that gets you wound up and really grinds your gears, these are your biggest clues as far as deeper shadow work to be unraveled. And so during this period of time with Mercury working backwards through the sign of deep healing, deep karmic wounds, it's likely you might be activated or triggered by certain things. And this is purely in order to draw your attention to it so that you can rewire your brain and choose to think differently about these things. And maybe even learning to think with our heads less and more with our hearts, because the human body actually has 3 brains, okay? We've got the brain in our head, which is the one that we've been told is the most important, but we also have the heart and the solar plexus in the gut, okay? There's the same tissues in your heart and your gut as there is in your brain, and actually there's a giant nerve that goes from your gut up to your brain and called the vagus nerve, and more information goes up than down, okay? So moving forward, humans in the new age are going to be using their solar plexus or their gut as their brain. Their feelings are going to be more important than the brain, because the brain is really only in charge of the environment, like surveying the environment to make sure that we don't die. Okay, that's what the brain does. It looks outside of us to identify threats, make sure we eat, and that we reproduce. Okay, mating opportunities, food, safety, that's what the brain does. So over the next 3 weeks, I would recommend deepening your meditative practice, your introspective practice. If you're somebody who has a hard time meditating, I feel you. It doesn't have to be like sitting down in silence. If you're neurotic, try a meditative walk. Anything to put your focus inside in the present moment, okay? And slow down. Don't worry about being in a rush for anything. Don't worry about needing to figure anything out. Don't worry about moving forward. Just be exactly where you are right now. Make space for yourself to be still and see what comes. After all, remember, you are the creator. You are the source of your reality. And when you're looking outside of yourself, all you're doing is recreating a reality that is not in your control, and you are reacting to things and recreating the clusterfuck that is the shit show of society outside of you, okay? So take your focus and put it inwards, especially over the next 3 weeks, and see what you can uncover.